Good afternoon. Welcome. On behalf of the In Flanders Fields Fund, I thank you for coming here today. This marks the 100th anniversary of the writing of the poem In Flanders Fields by Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander McCrae. The presentation we have today is quite short, sort of keeping with the shade that we have over there, trying to keep everyone out of the sun. So, without too much, I wanted to thank the partners of our organization today that made all this possible: the Capital Foundation, the Delta Chi chapter of the Zeta Psi fraternity, the Flag and General Officers Network, the Future Leaders for America Foundation, the National Defense Committee, the National Defense Foundation, the Rear Admiral James J. Carey Foundation, the United States World War I Centennial Commission, and the Washington Scholars Fellowship Program. In addition to our partners, we had quite a few generous donors who I'd like to recognize today as well. At the Torch sponsorship level, we have the Capital Foundation, the Future Leaders for America Foundation, and James McCrae. At the McCrae sponsorship level, we have Keenan Kuntz, Matt Carnevale, Rear Admiral Carey, and the Theta Xi chapter of the Zeta Psi fraternity. At the Centennial sponsorship level, we have Jay Rothberg, Mike Nagel, and Tom Florzak. At the Laureate sponsor level, we have Christopher Conway, Patrick Collins, Stone Lyons, and Thomas Luby. And then we additionally have quite a few sponsors at the Poppy level who are included in your pamphlet today. In addition to our partners and donors, lots of thanks are in order to the volunteers today who also made this possible. Joshua Garris, Adam Locke, Kyle Breckenridge, Stone Lyons, Matt Carter, Ed Flights, Caleb Stout, Billy Weisenhorn, Tom Luby, Drew Copeland, Devin Chiser, Chase Cabot, Gabe Green, Harry DeCabo, Cyrus Chancellor, and Tom Morgan in the Georgetown Army ROTC Color Guard team. The purpose of this fund is to honor the legacy of Lieutenant Colonel McCrae as a veteran and poet. Eventually, the executive director of our fund, Tom Florzak, will be speaking on that matter further. But I wanted to invite everyone to please rise for the presentation of the national colors.
Time. March. Colors. Turn. Color guard. Home. Present. Arms. Colors. Turn. Forward. March.
So as I mentioned, our next speaker will be Tom Florzak, Executive Director for the In Flanders Fields Fund. This year we were able to raise for the cost of this event as well as save some additional money, but our mission is not done at this point. Tom will be speaking about the philanthropic effort that we have begun to embark on.
First off, allergies are pretty bad today, am I right? So if I clear my throat a little bit, I apologize. Thank you to everyone who is here today. This is the first of many events for the In Flanders Fields Fund. I'd like to talk a little bit about the fund. 100 years ago, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. John McCrae offered a clarion call, a call to action. Today, we draw inspiration from McCrae. Today, we dedicate the beginnings of a fellowship fund for veterans in the arts. McCrae served as an artillery officer, as a doctor, and as a poet. He wrote in Flanders Fields during the worst of situations. World War I began in summer 1914, and each side thought they would win before Christmas. Instead, the war trapped millions of men in a deadly conflict. Instead, McCrae found himself with the 1st Brigade Canadian Field Artillery during the Second Battle of Ypres in Belgium. At Ypres, the Germans used a mass gas attack for the first time. During the battle, McCrae's friend, Lieutenant Alexis Helmer, died and was subsequently buried. McCrae then wrote In Flanders Fields in response to the death. The arts soothe the soul. They refill our fervor. We carry on the fight. I'm honored to begin a noble cause which will reap real benefits in the following year and ask you to join us. If you haven't already, sign up for our contact list at our table to be kept abreast of developments and future events. This poem will live on, not in name, but in acts. It doesn't end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Today I'll be reading some remarks from the World War I Centennial Commission. Unfortunately, they were unable to send a representative here today, but provided remarks regarding it. The World War I Centennial Commission is the official sanctioned body for commemorations of World War I in the United States by Congress. So, to begin, World War I marked the first time in United States history that we would defend liberty against foreign aggression. It sparked an American century which led to many more sacrifices by our nation in the following century. In defense of freedom during World War I, more than 4 million men and women served from the United States. 375,000 suffered as a casualty, with nearly a third of them dead. And so, commemorative programs, activities, and sites allow people to learn about the history of World War I, the United States' involvement, and the war's effects. By doing so, we honor and commemorate the participation of the United States and its citizens in this effort. As it did in every other aspect of life, the Great War had an enormous effect on literature in general and on poetry specifically. It was, in the words of Oxford University English lecturer, plunged into inhumane conditions, reacted to their surroundings in poems. Recognition of the effects works like In Flanders Fields had on public attitudes during their time and on our historical understanding of World War I is an essential aspect of the Centennial Commemoration. The public observance of the centennial of the publication of In Flanders Fields is a fitting tribute to the Canadian doctor who spent time in the United States at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. Reading again the wartime poems of McCrae and other writers is an important way for people in the United States to learn about and commemorate the sacrifices made by all those who served in the Great War. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae Fellowship is to be commended for its efforts to continue McCrae's dream of the creation of beauty in any and all situations, no matter how dire they appear. I'd like to add, in addition, as this alludes to it, one of the philanthropic efforts of our organization is to provide a housing and a stipend to a veteran pursuing a career in the arts here in Washington, D.C., to honor McCrae's legacy as both a poet and a soldier. Now we proceed on to the reading of the poem and the comments and remarks by Rear Admiral James J. Carey. Sir, if you could please come up.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I know the program says the poem and then some remarks, but I want to shift that and make it some remarks and then the poem. So to a degree, I can set the stage for what McCrae was thinking when he wrote that poem. Also, I got here a little early and I've been watching this shadow of shade creep forward, and I know the folks in the front row are hoping that it will get there soon. Being a good naval officer, I've kind of tracked it, and I think it's going to get there about 1 o'clock when we're finished. So sorry about that, but I will talk quickly. Personally, I have a unique linkage to World War I. My dad, Sergeant Robert Emmett Carey, and my uncle, Corporal John Eugene Carey, both fought there. Although, as you all know, the United States did not get in that war until 1917. But they were in France, not Belgium. And that said, the whole Flanders Field area was involved in the war for all 4 years. And I spoke with one of you earlier about how that line at Flanders Field during the whole 4 years of that war moved barely less than a mile. And yet all the carnage with the constant barrages of artillery and the men that it was killing. I want to give my special compliments to the undergraduates of American University for establishing this event to commemorate Flanders Field being written 100 years ago this day. It's a tremendous undertaking for college undergraduates who do have studies and tests and homework and all of the things for their education, and yet to take this on and make it happen, I think is a marvelous commitment and a good sense of what our youth today can do when they set their minds to it. I'd also like to praise the men of the Zeta Psi fraternity. Colonel McCrae was a member of Zeta Psi, although in Canada, I believe the chapter in Toronto, if I have that right. And the Zeta Psi chapter has put a lot of time and effort in this as well. And so my compliments to them, and exceptionally well done. As you heard earlier, the United States Congress has established a commission, the World War I 100th Anniversary Commemoration Commission, to take the next 4 to 5 years to put together events in this country, beginning for the most part in 1917 when America really got involved, but working with the Europeans and Canadians and others who were involved for the events that are now already going on in Europe, and including at the American Cemetery in Flanders Field, which I have not been to, but I've seen photographs of. It's an incredibly, incredibly beautiful place. But I'm confident for Matt and Tom and all of you who have been involved in this, your efforts today will lead to another ceremony next year at this same place on this same date. And then in 1917, when the World War I Commemoration Commission, now your official sponsors, is there in support of you. In 1918, I think it will be even bigger and even better. So well done, and everyone plan to be here a year from now. Now, before I read the poem, I'd like to do a little bit about setting the scenario for what the battlefield was like in Belgium 100 years ago today. That war had been going on for over a year. The area was primarily rich fields and farmlands and small towns, very rich agricultural fields, thus Flanders Fields. And yet for the year that had been going on in the war and the tremendous use of artillery, and it was wet and it was muddy and it was cold, and these men were in trenches and in bunkers. It was really a horrific experience, and the artillery there was a lot unlike World War II. The artillery in World War I both sides would lob a shell over about every 15 or 20 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nobody could get any rest. And then in the all-out artillery onslaughts, why they would fire just continuously for 24, 48 hours, 4 days, 6 days, 8 days. You can imagine what that had to be like. And McCrae and his young lieutenant friend in the battalion who was killed the day before, they had to be constantly on edge. And in fact, it was on May the 2nd that the lieutenant, who was a good friend of then Major John McCrae, stepped outside the bunker and was almost immediately killed by a direct hit from an artillery shell. McCrae was quite distraught. The next day, they proceeded to bury the young lieutenant. The chaplain was away on other duties, so McCrae, being second in command of the battalion and the battalion doctor, officiated at those ceremonies. And obviously, it was a very sad burial. Everyone was really like this lieutenant, and the fact that he had been there one day and gone the next had them all quite despondent, including McCrae, who sat down to write this poem because he had to do something in his friend's memory. As you listen to the words, be aware that John McCrae wrote this in the context of those who were dead. This is not him speaking, it is those who are dead who are speaking to those who are hearing the poem, the living. And thus he began. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw a sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field. Now that poem by McCrae was later published in a magazine called Punch in December of that year, and it went on to be recited at Memorial Day commemorations from then on. I remember in my hometown of Berlin, Wisconsin, listening to that poem being recited every Memorial Day. So today we remember Lieutenant Colonel McCrae for his gift of these words that now commemorate not just the men in his battalion, but in memory of all who have given their lives in service to their country. Thanks very much.